The obesity rate in the United States today is 3 times as high as it was in the 1970s.
Even washing doesn't actually take off the pesticide residue to an extent, right?
We've developed a virtual addiction to these kinds of foods.
Yeah, I think we dig our own grave there.
The problem is they also have almost every packaged food in your supermarket is unhealthy. So I just don't see any reason to recommend either producing or consuming organically grown foods.
All right. I think the next question on the SNAP-Ed funding.
In the United States, where welfare isn't popular,
just by bringing up these as to make America healthy again, it's not going to really have a big impact.
In the RFK Jr. agenda, is going to make America less healthy.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Caffelogue with Naga, where we bring people, passion, and professions that shape the world around us. I'm your host Naga, and today's guest is someone whose work has profoundly shifted how we think about food, not just what's on our plates, but the systems, science, and policies behind it. Dr. Robert Paarlberg is a leading political scientist and the author of numerous bold and eye opening books, including Resetting the Table, as well as Food Politics, and several others that challenged conventional wisdom and bring clarity to complex global food issues. His writing cuts through the noise and offers a clear, evidence based lens on everything from industrial farming to organic myths, local food movements, and biotechnology. Reading his work felt like turning on a light in a space that I already understood. It challenged me, grounded me, and sparked a whole new curiosity. So, without further ado, let's welcome Robert and talk about his book, Resetting the Table, which is a straight talk about the food we grow and eat. So, listening to Robert would definitely be nothing less than a wisdom, and I'm privileged to have him part of my show. Okay. Robert, it's a real privilege, to have you today in my show, Caffelogue with Naga, and deep dive into your book, Resetting the Table. I hope it's. I think I when I bumped into this book based on my conversation, with one of the professor, who said, we talked a lot about the organic and non-organic foods and how the food system has actually evolved over a period, and then she said, hey, you should read this book, from Robert. So then I kind of started researching, and I first looked at your Food Politics, which is compelling. I mean, it's pretty, while it is written way back, but I think you have really, even today, I think it's still makes sense. So it's a very, very valid topic, and this gives a bold and um, different perspective. So you have a perspective about the food system and how the food is sourced, and what is organic versus non-organic, but or even the industrial farming and the animal farming and how the food is sourced. So but this gives a different perspective, and your thorough research and your wisdom of so many years of research and your interest in political science, right? So brings helps a lot of people to get the knowledge. So I'm thrilled to have this conversation today and get your perspective and your experience and learn through this conversation. So welcome to my show, Robert.
Well, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to have a chance to talk with you. And thanks for checking out some of my books. You mentioned my Food Politics book. I'm not sure that you're aware that there was a third edition that was published about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I saw that. It's
Okay, yeah,
interesting. But I first got the one which probably in way back in 2000. 3 or 4, I believe, right?
2010, I think,
2000.
the first edition.
Yeah, 10, correct. I think, and then I saw, like, recently I saw that there's a new edition, but I didn't really had a chance to go into that. But yeah, I will order that and start reading. But I think
But
before we go,
it's not perfectly up to date. Anything that was published before Trump's victory last November is not perfectly up to date.
yes, that's true. That's true. I think there's a lot happening. So there is, I don't know, today to tomorrow, or every day there is a new update coming in. So it's really difficult to keep it up to date, I believe, with the current political scenario.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I'm yeah, okay. I think so. Before we get into the questions, because I want to start with our "Make America Healthy Again," and then get into the book. But I know you have 40 plus years of experience, and your complete life you've devoted in terms of the farming, and especially understanding the agriculture and the science behind it, and also not just there, but you're also contributing towards the policy making. You've done a research, being a political scientist. So please share your experience, and then I know you had the upbringing of part of a farming, a farmer community, and your father, was a farmer too, and your brother. So I read about your history. So maybe share it for the audience, about your journey and your interest in this field, Robert.
Yes, you're correct. My father was born on a small family farm in Indiana, and my mother's family also came from a long line of farmers from Minnesota. So I have a Midwest farming background in my DNA. I was never a farmer myself, although I worked in the summers on my uncle's farm, which was the farm my dad grew up on. And so I had some fascinating exposure, firsthand exposure to production agriculture back then. But I didn't. Then I went off to school. I studied political science. Became interested in international relations. I didn't get back into food and agriculture really until later, based in part on a trip that I took to India back in the 1960s, in the middle of a serious food crisis, when the monsoon had failed 2 years in a row, and hungry refugees were streaming in from the countryside, and there was poverty everywhere and a panic over a possible famine. And fortunately, it was avoided in part because of massive deliveries of food assistance from the outside, from the United States. But that got me interested in international food and agriculture, and in agricultural production, and in producing enough to meet current and future food needs around the world. And so my academic work gradually moved away from standard international relations into questions of international food production, international food trade, and I've worked uh, since since that first trip to India. I've been to India several more times. I've done a lot of work in Africa. I've worked in 10 or 15 different countries in
Oh.
Africa. I've also been to East Asia. One country I've never visited is Russia, and I'm not particularly eager to start doing that right now. But um, I've studied and taught and done research and consulted in the area of food and agriculture for a long time. The book that you held up, titled "Resetting the Table,"
Yes,
is
yes.
probably the farthest I've moved in the direction of food as well as agricultural policy work. I used to be very heavily agricultural. Now I've moved more into the food end of the supply chain.
No, I think you're right. While agriculture is is the important, is the heart of any society, right? Because but the policies, and if you're part, I mean, I think I heard this is from a very prominent personality, right? Unless you are contributing or you're part of the policy making, you cannot bring up any change in any of the functions in the government. So I think I mean, experts like you contributing and trying to talk about the way things are moving in this food industry. Yeah, I think I know that recently you were talking about the live methane reduction in the livestock, which you wrote in the I think the Central for Industrial Research, in Science and Research, right? I think that's a very very important topic to talk about. Yeah. Uh, thanks, I mean, thanks for all the wisdom. I mean, when we start, I'm more interested in this topic, in this area of food and nutrition and farming, because I also, as I wrote to you, that I grew up in a household where we kind of grew our own vegetables. We had so many vegetables around my house, and growing up. And then it's a shift when we moved into more of a concrete jungle after you leave your house, and then you get into somewhere. So for me, always it's fascinating to connect where the food comes from today, in this industrial world, and how do we choose the right food, and how the policies are actually um, helping, so you get yourself educated. So I mean, learning from people like you and reading the books across the world, and it helps gather that. So thanks for continuously doing that, Robert. Okay, so my question, I know, I mean, you shared your journey, so which is definitely, I mean, I know I wanted people to know about. I know you've talked in multiple forums about the food policies and how things are evolving. So I want to bring, as you said, anything before the Trump's administration is not not an updated book. So with the current Make America Healthy Again policies, right? So I think the which I wanted to deep dive. The first question for me is on the report released in May 22nd, 2025. So it criticizes the ultra processed food and chemical exposures as drivers of chronic disease. So you are highlighting a lot about that, in the pragmatism in the modern agriculture. How do you see industrial agricultural systems aligning with food health agenda, right? So I mean, what is your opinion about that? Do you think, uh, but some of the policies, or changes, what they're talking about, it's prevalent, or probably this is a known topic for a while. So how do you think this bringing this up right now is going to make a change from a reform or policy, right? So that's my question to start.
Yeah, don't know what the changes are going to be that will come out of this.
Hmm.
I support greater emphasis
Hmm.
on dietary health. I have I've been arguing for some time that the number one food problem in the United States, for example, isn't hunger. It's not undernutrition. It's, in a way, it's overnutrition, excessive consumption
Hmm.
of foods that are laden with added sugar, added salt, added fat, and they're ultra processed. So it's easy to overeat. We've learned that if you give people exactly the same foods, but you give some people an ultra processed form of that food and others an unprocessed form of that food, those that get the ultra processed form will eat 500 more calories every day and gain and gain weight quickly. Uh, and and if you ask them, well, why were you eating that much? They won't say, well, it's not because they won't say it's because it tasted better. It's simply they're eating fast. You don't even have to chew, and before you know it, you've eaten too much.
Yeah.
And the so the and it's not just the processing, it's the formulation of the foods. The companies that manufacture these foods and put them on the market invest a great deal of time and energy and money
Hmm.
in exactly the formula that will make them virtually addictive. Just the right combination of sugar, salt, fat, texture, color, flavoring, so that it hits what the industry calls a bliss point in the back of your mouth.
The
And
dopamine effect, yeah.
yeah, and that triggers the reward cycle in
Hmm.
your brain. And if you see that food or see it advertised, that will trigger a craving for it. And before you know it, you're virtually addicted to something that's not good for you. I think that um, this would be my description of the number one food problem in the United States. It's no longer hunger. It's our virtual addiction to too many unhealthy foods. And
Unhealthy.
it's not as though we don't have healthy foods as a choice. Supermarkets have a lot of healthy foods.
Hmm.
Problem is they also have almost every packaged food in your supermarket is unhealthy. And so we're surrounded, even in a supermarket, by unhealthy choices. And then these choices are advertised, relentlessly advertised, inside the supermarket and also outside as well, and to children on television Saturday morning.
Wow.
People worry about food deserts. I'm more worried about what are called food swamps, where
Hmm.
we can't get away from these temptations created by food industries.
I think that's your second chapter, right? The food swamp nation. So that's, you talk about the excessive from the time of famine. We have come to a I mean, world where there is excessive food available, and it's again the variety, the choice, which comes from different world. I mean, you click of a button, you are able to get whatever, whether you wanted something pasta from Italy or some sushi from, you know, Asian cuisine. So there's a lot of options available. So, and again, as you say, when you walk into and you've written this um, this, I think I loved that when you talked about even CVS. So like every shop or retail store today has come up with option of not just selling food, but also um, having a cafeteria. They're, you know, having much more you know, way to attract customers. So you call it grocerants. So I loved that. And also the point which you stress, which is very valid. And I used to have this thought, Robert, every time when I walk into a clinic, right? And even you have a pharmacy associated with the clinic, right, with that
Right.
hospital. I used to be amazed, you know, okay, so this is where people come for getting their health checked and probably get better. But when you go and buy that medicines, right, apart from the prescribed medicines, you see a lot of junk.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So,
mentioned in my book that
yes.
when I go to pick up my prescribed medicines at my local CVS pharmacy, in order to get to the prescription counter in the back corner of the store, I have to walk through several aisles filled with soda, candy, sugary snack foods. It's I can make myself healthy and unhealthy
Unhealthy.
in a single visit to that
Yes.
single store.
Very true, very true. Yeah, no, I think I loved that analogy when you mentioned in the book too, right? I mean, I keep thinking about it, but now I see I resonate. Okay, there is somebody who has written about it, and I don't think so. It's changing, or it there is any thought about. Uh, I think it's. I'm not sure people who are in the health industry is really thinking about this, or even there is a policy around restricting these availability of these kind of junk foods, or whatever is come under the classification, in such places where you are going and actually getting medicines or health related supplements, right? So I think, I'm not sure, it's very contradictory when you say, as you say, right, in the same single visit I actually can get healthier as well as the counterintuitive or counterproductive by getting
Yeah, yeah. Well,
temptation.
as a culture, of course, in the United States, no, nobody wants their choices restricted in any way. They don't want them regulated. They don't want them taxed. They don't mind having them criticized, but they don't want the government telling them what they can and cannot do or where they can and cannot do it.
That's, I think this happened, right? When the vaccines came, a lot of people don't want to get vaccinated, or they don't want to wear masks. So that's
That's right.
happened.
Yeah, it's
So
the libertarian streak in this country that goes back a long ways.
true. All right. I think the next question on the SNAPED funding, I think I this was an interesting. I know even the Ken Cook and Marion Nestle, in a conversation I was listening to, they talked about this in detail. But I think the Republican proposals threaten SNAPED funding, which is the 536 million annually, and aim to cut 300 billion from the main SNAP program. So that's a report which I looked at from my the articles I read and also I researched. So is this um, but this is counterproductive than helping the people who need snaps to have access to good food, right? So but while RFK Jr. is talking about reduced processed foods and probably oils, fluorides and whatnot, and even polluting the sea. So he's looking at lead. I mean, he talked about that. So there's a lot of things he's talking about in terms of what are the repercussions, or probably having these part of our American health system. But then you're trying to stop the funding for a SNAPED program, which gives the flexibility for people who are not able to afford to go and buy healthy options. So how do you think this is?
Yeah, yeah. It's the SNAP Ed component of the SNAP program is only a small part of it, and
Mm,
it's it's a component that attempts to give SNAP recipients, SNAP
mm,
benefit recipients, better information about the kind of food they should eat. It's not a requirement. They don't have to do anything, and those that receive the SNAP Ed benefit may or may not make healthier choices. It's not been clearly established that SNAP Ed is a powerful lever for
mm,
improving diets. The SNAP program overall, it's called the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And the way it functions is primarily as uh, an income safety net for for poor families, for poor households. You're eligible to get the benefit if your household income falls below a certain level. So it functions a little bit like the old welfare programs used to function. Um, they were cash assistance to poor people. The SNAP program is a food purchase credit given to poor people
right.
that allows them to save money on their food purchases that they can then use for other things. So it's a little bit like it's an income support program that's operated through food purchases. And in the United States, where welfare isn't popular, where Congress won't vote for straight cash payments to poor households, they will vote for uh, a food voucher guarantee because it's feeding people.
Right.
And
Right.
it's hard to vote against that. And also farmers like that because well, you're increasing the quantity of food that people eat, supposedly through this program, which means people who grow food have a bigger market to sell into. But It's not a particularly effective way to improve dietary health because you're not restricted in the SNAP program on the foods that you can purchase with the benefit. You can purchase healthy foods, but you can also purchase sugary beverages and
Yes, there's no
canned.
restriction. Yeah.
Yeah, you can purchase foods that are not particularly good for you. So I support the SNAP program, strongly support the SNAP program as income support for poor households. It's one of the very few entitlement programs that the federal government offers that is effectively targeted toward those in genuine need,
Need.
as opposed to Social Security, which goes to rich people as well as poor people, or as opposed to Medicare, which goes to rich people as well as poor people. Here is finally an entitlement program that's targeted toward low-income communities. So I'm in favor of it that way, but it's a weak instrument for shaping the health of diets in America, in part because most of us with unhealthy diets don't participate in the SNAP program. We just go to the supermarket and use our own money to buy unhealthy food.
Yeah, I think we dig our own grave. Yeah. That's true. So
Yeah.
I think it's so difficult to digest that. The marketing also, if you look at it, while there was a film which was played by the Make America Healthy Again program as well, right in the beginning. But then if you look at predominantly, well, that's good. But if you look at the regulations and in terms of, as you said, a lot of corporates are actually funding to create something like a bliss point when you purchase a product. And also the marketing goes a long way. There is an effort of marketing across, be it if you walk into a retail store or even the TV. So they say $1 or $5, um, um, I would say burger or whatever. If you open the any channels where the marketing is about, beat McDonald's or beat Wawa, anywhere, there is so much heavy marketing about the food, which is easily available, cheap. So the tendency for the general population is to actually look at it and also the fancy words and go and buy it. So I don't think so. There is effort made to stop and bring regulations in terms of giving the right, I would say, marketing or availability of healthy options. Nobody markets carrot or beans or any other vegetables, right? So why would they need so much marketing for unhealthy foods? So it's an interesting thought. But I think, what's your perspective about
Yeah,
government
I
opinion?
think there are a lot of ways that we could protect consumers from the dangers of the food swamp, from the dangers of all these tempting products that food companies are putting in front of us. One thing we could do would be to have nutrition labeling on the front of the package instead of on the side of the package, uh, where it is today. Right now, if you look at the nutrition facts panel,
Yeah,
which is required, it's all numbers in small type. You can't make any sense of it unless you study it for a while. What we need is something, and you have to take the product off the shelf to do that. What we need is something on the front of the package that you can see it at a glance when you're going down the aisle with your shopping cart, and something that will use color-coded symbols to tell you whether it's healthy, green, unhealthy, red, or somewhere in between, which would be yellow. Uh, these systems exist, and they are much more useful than the system we have in the United States. But every time we try to get the Food and Drug Administration to require this sort of front of package nutrition labeling, it gets blocked, of course, by the food companies. They don't want that much honesty out there in front of
consumers.
their unsuspecting customers. Something else we could do, of course, is to restrict the advertising of some foods, those that are heavy in sugar, salt, and fat. We could restrict the advertising of those foods at least to children. And a number of countries do that, but the United States doesn't do that. There's a quirk in our legal system that allows the Supreme Court to classify food advertisements as speech. And so it can't,
Freedom of
we have
speech.
free speech here, and you can't restrict advertising because it's considered a restriction on free speech. The third thing we could do is to take some products that have very little nutrition value at all and serious adverse health consequences like sugar sweetened beverages and put an excise tax on those products in order to discourage their consumption. And this is done in a number of European countries, and it's now being done in half a dozen or so municipalities in the United States. And it works. The consumption of these products goes down if the price is noticeably higher.
Right. That's the only way.
On the shelf, not just at checkout, but on the shelf. An excise tax shows up on the shelf. You don't have to. It doesn't get slipped in as you're checking out.
Yes, that's true.
And yet we haven't done that at the state level anywhere or at the federal level anywhere in the United States. So it's not as though policy instruments aren't available to help us out here. It's just that a combination of consumer resistance to any kind of regulation or tax, plus, of course, food company resistance to any of these things, makes it easy in the Congress and in most state legislatures to stop these ideas dead in their tracks.
Yeah. I think when you talked about the excise tax, I think that's a very important point to look at. I mean, again, you're very specific on in the shelf, right? So it's not that I just look at it as probably not a expensive product and I pick it up and then during the checkout it doesn't make sense because I've already picked it up. So it's important to have that shows up in the shelf so that
Sure.
The consumers make the conscious choice of choosing the healthy products. At least they move towards it. Yeah.
And there are other systems as well that are in use. They're voluntary systems, but some of them are being used by supermarkets. It's not a front of package label, but a front of shelf label. There's a system called Guiding Stars, which is used by half a dozen different supermarket chains in the United States. And products on the shelf are given either 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, or no stars, depending upon their nutrition value per 100 calories of content. And it's a very easy thing for customers to use. When I looked at this, I wasn't totally surprised to learn that when the Guiding Stars labels were first put on the shelf in one supermarket chain, they were somewhat abashed to learn that half of the products in the store got no stars at all.
It's expected, right? That's how it is. The current supermarket when you walk in, of course, yeah. I think if you go and do a Guiding Stars in majority of the retail chains today, and you also talked about in the book, I don't think so. Half more than half of their products would be no stars or 1 star, probably.
Yeah.
I would say, yes.
But we want to keep buying these products because, as I say, we've developed a virtual addiction to these kinds of foods. Now, the food companies say, "Hey, wait a minute, we're not forcing you to buy these things. It's a matter of personal responsibility. We don't have a gun to your head. You're the person who puts it in your mouth. It's personal responsibility." And then I say to myself, "Well, wait a minute. The obesity rate in the United States today is 3 times as high as it was in the 1970s. It can't possibly be the case that we are 3 times as irresponsible today
Hmm.
as we were in the 1970s. It's not consumers that have changed. It's the nature of the products and their availability, the fact that we're surrounded with them all the time, that has put us in a very difficult position. Now, not everybody, of course, is susceptible to this kind of advertising and and temptation. If you're a health conscious consumer, you've learned not to pay any attention at all to these products and to the advertisements. They go right over your head.
Yes.
And you go straight for the healthy products out on the perimeter of the store. But uh, most uh, most consumers are insufficiently health conscious, or they're after the greater convenience that comes with eating packaged products that don't even have to be cooked. You can maybe heat them up in the microwave, or boil them in the water,
Yep.
and there's no cleanup. It's a lot easier if you're an overstressed parent trying to feed your kids at the end of a long, busy day. You don't want to spend a lot of time in food shopping, food preparation, and food cleanup. And so it's convenience that also drives us in the direction of these unhealthy products.
Right. I think it's twofold. If we have to look at in terms of to solve this uh, kind of the problem of convenience versus trying to choose the right food for you to feed you and your children. Um, One is to either individual consumer has to be more aware of the the healthy options, or the government and the policies, or even the individual companies who produce these products to actually be providing that information ahead of time. Okay, what is the repercussions, or probably what is the health benefits you're going to get you by using this product upfront, so that you are making an aware choice. And I think it should be two way. I mean, we can't really compromise, or probably push the consumer to actually choose against convenience, because definitely when it comes to convenience versus cooking your own food, spending the time, probably
Right.
everybody will go with convenience. So that's inevitable. But how do we make that convenient choice of the consumer doesn't impact them adversely, their health? It's also a moral responsibility of the companies who produce those convenient foods, which is healthier, right? So that's it should be looked at both ways.
Right. Right. There are plenty of healthy foods that are convenient.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
have an apple.
But
Have an apple, not a
very,
candy
very
bar.
true, very true. Have a banana, apples, or all the fruits.
Yeah.
But I think the amount of people who goes and picks the fruits, that's also very, very less. I'm not sure if it's beyond bananas. I don't think so anybody venture into any other fruits, predominantly, right? Or they go into more of a the health milkshakes and smoothies store, where it's still kind of not raw but processed, but at least some way they are trying to venture into such fancy
Mhm.
options. Great. I think thank you so much for sharing those insights. I mean, there's I'm not sure whether there's going to be a reform, suddenly a drastic change which is going to happen, but I think probably with RFK Jr.'s points is there, it's valid. Whatever he's talking about, seed oils or food dyes, but how drastic change is going to come in the coming years is we have to wait and watch, I believe.
Yeah, I have to say that uh, I don't share the anxiety about seed oils that I hear coming out of RFK Jr. and a number of other food influencers. I don't know exactly where this came from, but
Yes, exactly.
if you go to the American Heart Association, an organization that I trust, they'll tell you there's no reason, no scientific reason to stay away from seed oils. It might you might be a little bit better off with olive oil, unless you're cooking something that doesn't work very well with the olive taste. But I think this anxiety about seed oils is
I'm not sure.
it,
Yeah, it's a
it's
recent hype which is created. I'm not sure where it's coming from, as you say, but
oh, everyone says, oh well, it's you get omega-6 fatty acids from seed oils, and it's not as good as omega-3s. And well, maybe that's true, but omega-6 isn't bad for you.
yeah.
So why are we frightening ourselves?
And even if nothing else gives you omega 9 unless you eat macadamia nut, so you need. So yeah, I think that even in general the sesame oil, or even the other, the peanut oil, uh, it gives a better option compared to a processed vegetable or even a canola oil, unless and until you're doing a french fries with continuous deep frying of canola oil. Probably it may be dangerous, but maybe a moderate amount of it as needed, then I don't think so you should be really thinking about
Yeah,
worrying.
it's not just the kind of oil you're using; it's how much you're using.
Yes, exactly.
That's what gets most people in trouble.
Yeah, I think I have a
And while we're on this same subject, I'm
yes.
also not sure why RFK Jr. is focused on dyes in foods rather than on the added sugars and the added salts. I mean, those are the real problems, but for some reason he's focused
Dyes.
on exotic chemicals. He's got a kind of a chemical phobia that once again plays to anxious parents who aren't sure if the food their children are getting is safe. And we've been frightening ourselves about chemicals in food for a long time. The most abundant chemical in our food is actually H2O. It's if we took all the chemicals out of food, there wouldn't be any food there.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, I don't know. It's not just a generic term of chemicals we should just talk about. I mean, that's, as you say, maybe he has a chemical phobia. Yeah, food dyes. I think all the points, all the even fluorides has. I think these are important food adulterants which are present for more than 2 decades, or even if you just go a decade ago, there has been information, or even a lot of conversations and research articles, and you have put a lot of information too. But I don't think so just by bringing up these as to make America healthy again, it's not going to really have a better impact than trying to, as you say, reduce the marketing or production of sugary beverages, or even processed foods which has a lot of sugar and additives or salt. I
Yeah,
mean,
a lot of what I see in the RFK Jr. agenda is going to make America less healthy. He's taking money away from the National Institutes of Health. He's taking money away from the Centers for Disease Control and and Prevention. He wants to take fluoride out of the water. He wants us to do something which can be dangerous, which is to drink raw milk. He's trying to make vaccines more difficult to get. My
yeah,
goodness, this is like a full court press against proven public health interventions that there's no reason to get rid of.
true, true. I'm sure some of the policymakers will revolt or probably put their point to get across the table and resist. I don't know where it's going to go. Yeah, so I think thanks for the your perspective, right? I think I wanted to definitely start there because this is very important to get your perspective, being a person who's contributing on or doing research on the having an interest on political science and the policy making, right? So I think there are so many important points which have I mean, the reason I liked the book, Robert, is not just it's not just any it's not like any other book. I mean, it cuts through the noise, and with a lot of clear evidence based lens you have taken, right? So it's not a lot of information you have shared has backup facts and the percentages, or even getting into the real farms like Nidlinger, and what he. I mean, I think it's a thorough research. That's the crux, or or even that gives, at least for me, a lot of perspective. It helped to change or understand what to look for. So I mean, it's not just about the writing, but the facts and the information is what you've shared. It goes a long way, right? I mean, even today those are very valid. I can still relate to those when I look at the kind of things which is happening around. So um, that thanks for the wisdom. And getting into the first chapter, right? I think I have this question. So the industrial farming has testing the case against industrial farming. So this, I had this thought too, right? So industrial farming, I mean, you said this book, even as a thought which came up during a Harvard meeting which you attended, where they talked about going back to the organic and slow way of producing food, versus the industrial farming, which is actually hampering or harming the society, or the main cause for obesity, or whatever the chronic diseases which people have. But you have challenged that thought, and it's very true with the current trend of AI and the way in which we can actually leverage the technology to actually help the labor intense farming activities to efficient way of producing more and scalable food, right? And healthier food too, which is definitely possible. So I think I wanted your perspective, because most of the time it's more of negative sentiments against the industrial farming in general, even
Yeah.
which I had to really challenge my thoughts to that. Okay, again, processed foods in general, if ultra processed, definitely it's not good. But as I mean, I also had a conversation with one of the persons, so I think I brought this point. We can't avoid processing. Let's say if I have to take rice from the crop, I have to process it. So I need that scale to actually do mass production of rice, and rip from that crop and then make it more edible, or even the other crops for that matter, to make it more of a edible way. So uh, I mean, that's what I believe. So maybe I want your perspective. Why is this general we associate industrial farming to be more negative, or probably having a negative impact in the society? And how do you think it's going to help on the environmental gains? So
Yeah, uh, I don't like the term industrial farming. I think industrial food is an appropriate term.
hmm,
It's the packaged foods in the supermarket are manufactured in a factory.
hmm, hmm.
It's not a biological process like growing food in a field.
Yeah.
It's manufactured in a factory. Now, farming, it's mechanical today, less human labor, more mechanical operation. But the crops and the animals themselves grow through a biological process, not an industrial process. And to the extent that farmers are assisting in the growing of the plants and the animals, it's increasingly post-industrial. They use methods that are information intensive rather than land intensive, energy intensive, or resource intensive. And the result is much less damage
Hmm.
to the natural environment.
Right.
for every pound of of corn or meat produced. I mean, look at modern corn production in the United States. Thanks to crop breeding, plus the use of fertilizers,
Right.
we are able today to produce 5 times as much corn as we did in 1940 on 20% less land. Now
Hmm.
that's good for the environment.
True. Yeah.
And we're not and now that we've learned how to reduce plowing through uh, different methods, including strip tillage, conservation tillage, um, no-till. Uh, we also burn less diesel fuel. If you're not plowing, you're not burning diesel fuel. And so the energy component of agricultural production per unit of output has gone down as well. And we're not using as many chemicals as we used to. If you look at pesticide use in American agriculture, it's 15% lower today than it was in 1980,
Right.
even though production is up by more than 40%. If you look at insecticide use specifically, it's more than 80%.
80% lower than, yeah, you mentioned
It
that.
is
Yeah.
lower than it was in
972.
1972. And what makes this possible is GPS systems for precision location in the field, onboard computers. The equipment knows exactly where it is in the field. It has a digital soil map. It knows the chemistry of the soil at that particular spot. And so it doesn't put down too much lime or too little lime. It puts down
Right.
exactly the optimal amount. That saves farmers in excess input costs and input use. And all this is possible by thanks to it's digital.
AI.
It's digital farming,
Yes.
and it's machine learning, and it's robotics, and it's remote sensing, and it's UAVs. It's like the rest of the economy. It's going digital, and AI is going to play a role. Already we have services out there. This is before AI became a household word. Actually,
Agri-tech has been there. I mean, at least for the last 10,
uh,
10 years.
if you asked a farmer 20 years ago what they think of AI, they would say, "Oh, artificial insemination. It's a good way to breed cattle." But uh, uh, but we have services now that take data from a farm and then bring in other data, including climate data,
Climate data, yeah.
and they advise farmers on when to do certain things and what combination of seeds and fertilizers
With
to
soil, yeah.
employ. It's
Right.
and so it's and I think these are I think these are valuable um, examples of progress. I wouldn't want to go back to the dirty farming of the past where we were blindly throwing chemicals on the ground, usually too much just to be safe and make sure that the crops had something.
Very true. Um, Definitely, I think it's a way, it's a lens, or the optics to to look at. I think people need to really change. I think adopt more technology, which is helping the yield and, as you say, reduce the use of chemicals. Right. So why not? Um,
Yeah, if you want to look at environmental damage from farming in the United States, it it peaked back in the 1930s, almost 100 years ago. That was back before we had high yielding hybrid corn. It was back before we were using fertilizers on wheat. And in order to increase wheat production, we plowed up the southern plains, which is a drought-prone region. And several years of drought in a row resulted in the soil turning to dust and blowing away. It was called the Dust Bowl. And millions of people living in Oklahoma and Kansas had to leave. They were environmental refugees. They either went back to the east or they went to California. And we haven't had another Dust Bowl, even though we're producing vastly more than we did in the 1930s, because we've learned to use inputs wisely and precisely, and to increase production on durable land, high quality durable land, so that we don't have to plow up fragile erodible lands.
Right, right. Yeah, I think the technology with the data amount of data we have, so we are able to actually not damage the other places and try to use the right land for the right probably fertilizers or the crop. I mean, not all the crop grows in all the regions or soils, so we need to really analyze that even so over a period with the data what we have. So it's
Right.
helping the farmers to actually plow at the right place and sow the right crop and continue the farming. Yeah, that's true. And again, my question is on the we talked a lot on the food spams. I think you've covered it, so I don't want to bring back that. But the organic scale versus impact, right? So only 1% of the point is only 1% of organic. The U.S. cropland is organic, so that's I think probably it may have increased a bit from the time you mentioned in the book to now, with a lot of people moving toward buying organic products. But I don't think so. It is drastic improvement, I would say. So what is your take on that, right? And
Yeah, well, the percent of U.S. cropland that's certified for organic production has been hovering around 1% for a long time. You get the impression, because organic food has a reputation for being valued and valuable and popular, and a lot of people want to have organic food, or say that they do. But farmers don't like to use organic methods because organic methods prohibit the use of any nitrogen fertilizer at all. Uh, uh, People wonder, well, where did the organic standard come from? It was not developed by an environmentalist or a nutrition scientist. It was developed 100 years ago by a mystic philosopher in Austria, who thought that synthetic nitrogen fertilizer couldn't possibly be healthy because it was created in a factory out of nitrogen in the air, rather than coming from something like manure. And this philosopher, he's an interesting person, Rudolf Steiner. He actually also believed in human reincarnation and the lost city of Atlantis. So the organic thought that you can't have any synthetic chemicals at all in food production is one that doesn't really stand up to sound science. And it's an idea that farmers don't like, because it means in order to grow the same amount of food, you need much more land
yeah,
and much more labor. And that's why organic food is expensive in the marketplace. It's organic yields for row crops are 20 or 30% lower than conventional yields, so you need more land. In order to get rid of weeds, you have to either use mechanical tillage, or you have to laboriously compost animal manure to fertilize the field. And so organic crops are 30 or 40% more expensive than conventional crops, and that means that organic foods are more expensive. And and of course, that we talk a lot about are more expensive, which is too bad, because consumers in the United States don't eat enough fruits and vegetables. Only 1 in 10 Americans eats the recommended quantity of fruits and vegetables. If all of our fruits and vegetables became organic, they'd have to spend a lot more to eat what they're eating today, so they'd actually eat less. It would be bad for our diet if all of our foods
I think
suddenly
it's not
had to
scalable.
be organic, and we would have to plow up more cropland, and that would be bad for wildlife habitat and biodiversity. So I just don't see any reason to recommend either producing or consuming organically grown foods. And the nutrition value of organically grown foods is the organic industry, of course, claims that these foods are more nutritious. But the best studies from Stanford University and elsewhere have looked at this, and they say there's no scientific evidence that organically grown foods are safer or more nutritious than conventionally grown foods. The organic industry says, no, wait a minute, there is evidence. Organic milk has 50% more beta carotene than conventional milk. And that's true. Mm-hmm. But conventional milk has so little beta carotene that 50% more than almost nothing is still almost nothing. So there's no medical payoff from that. Now, some organic advocates will try to scare you into thinking that conventional foods are lathed with pesticides and that's a health risk. They even produce a so-called list of the dirty dozen products out there that have the highest pesticide residues. And they publish this list every year, and there'll be something like strawberries will be the dirtiest of the dirty dozens, and that will scare some frightened parents away from buying strawberries. We should be eating more strawberries, not fewer strawberries. When you stop to think about this idea of the 12 products with the heaviest residues of pesticides, most of them have pesticide residues that are far below the tolerance that's set up by nutrition scientists and food safety and toxicologist experts to protect our health. So warning people away from the dirtiest foods in the marketplace is a little bit like warning a swimmer away from the deepest end of a wading pool, or warning medical patients against the dirtiest operating room in the hospital. It's a bogus standard of safety. Almost 99-point-something% of the foods in the supermarket have pesticide residues so far below the critical threshold established by the World Health Organization and the Food and Drug Administration that we shouldn't be worried about. We won't increase our health by avoiding conventionally grown products in advanced industrial countries like the United States, where the pesticides used are heavily regulated, and where the products are washed before they're put on the shelf.
Yeah, that's true. But I think that the awareness of, I mean, as you said, that there is definitely pesticide residual, but on the fruits or vegetables or the food products, but then it's way less than the tolerance level as per the scientists, which is definitely a good point.
Yeah,
Argument.
I would insist on the distinction between the safety of foods and pesticide residues in a country like the United States versus non-industrial countries, poor countries, where pesticides are not well regulated, and also where the foods are not washed consistently before they're sold. And so
but there is this question also, right? Sorry to interrupt, Robert. even washing doesn't actually take off the pesticide residue to an extent, right? Just running water, do you think it's going to remove some of the residual pesticides, or it's just to be more cautious? That's it. It's not going to harm.
It's
Hello, everyone. Hope you all liked this engaging and powerful conversation with Dr. Paarlberg, where we discussed his views on Make America Healthy Again policies and some important chapters from his book, Resetting the Table, talking about industrial farming or animal farming or livestock farming, and the important chapter, Food Swamp Nation, where there's abundance or excessive food choices available for the consumers. But how do we enable or help the consumers to make the right choice and stay healthy? So hope you all enjoyed the part one of the conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed, and it was privilege talking to Dr. Paarlberg. While we have more coming in the part two, where we are going to deep dive into the roots of organic farming and what are the legacy of the organic farming and the controversy of the green revolution, whether monoculture farming is fueling today's global hunger crisis, and Dr. Paarlberg unpacks the tension between the GMO and non-GMO, um, and why biotech in agriculture still faces global resistance, like genome editing or even CRISPR. Plus his take on the imitation meats, eco-modern food futures, and one myth he wish we would all stop believing. So stay tuned for the part two, which will be dropped soon. Please subscribe and support my channel, Caffelogue with Naga, for more interesting and powerful topics. Please share this conversation if you think this will benefit somebody who you know, and stay tuned for my upcoming conversations. Thank you.